Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar on secure remote access working. As you can imagine, many businesses have found themselves in urgent need of remote working solutions, which is why we've brought our Chief Technology Officer, Steve Beaumont, online today to run through our secure remote working on-demand service. So we're going to be taking questions at the end, so if you have anything specific to ask or anything pops in your head during the webinar, please just enter it into the chat box and we'll answer them all at the end. So for now, I'm going to hand over to Steve.
Thank you very much. So hopefully if I share my screen, you should all get some slide decks, and I'll just do a quick confirmation check, please. Slides visible on screen? Yep, perfect. Awesome. So thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time out this morning to talk around or attend this talk around this topic. My name is Steve Beaumont. I'm the PowerON Chief Technology Officer, general geek and lover of all things systems management. So a couple of things that we need to go through today when my slides catch up with me. Just quick overview of the agenda, a couple of different areas that we want to cover, mainly relating, there we go, mainly relating to the current situation, where exactly are we within this time, quick intro demo, show you some of the bits that we're going to be talking around, what the considerations that need to be thought about around remote working in general, and just some of the approaches that we can have, how security needs to be at the core of these solutions. Do another quick demo on this side, show you some more deeper insights into it and what benefits it can actually deliver, the types of stuff and solutions it can offer. What's current within the solutions, what's coming next, and then also how we progress this further than just initial knee-jerk reaction to getting something in. And then finally, questions and close. So, how our lives feel at present. This kind of summed it up for me when I saw this on Twitter from a guy that's at Viz. It's an unprecedented time. It's a monumental task that it looks like we could potentially be facing. It looks like it's going to be an uphill battle to be able to actually deliver what the businesses are asking us to be able to actually set up on a very short notice to be able to get something delivered for remote working for our staff. Now, there's lots of things that we have already within a lot of the businesses. There's traditional VPN style approaches that we have, a lot of stuff that is already potentially in place and is a known entity. So VPNs, on-premise VDI solutions and RDS that we already have, but they obviously do have some potential cons to them. Now, one of the main things is going to be around the scale and capacity that you actually have within them existing systems. A lot of these were designed for either a subset of users or worst case scenarios where we are just purely looking at, say, 300 users out of a few thousand. That's what they were designed for. Can we burst and scale at this short notice? It could be just a licensing question. It could actually be the fact that we need to bring in more beefier hardware. It's not a case that we can just turn a tap and suddenly have unlimited capacity to meet some of the demands that we have. Now, you could just say, well, fine, we'll just go for a free-for-all. Well, it works, I suppose. You can have users going and accessing things like Office 365 scenarios from home on their own personal devices. However, especially for me, that loss of control, the security implications it brings in, the ability for users to start downloading data to their personal devices, or worse, whatever's running on their personal devices starts to creep into your environment. I mean, please, for heaven's sakes, don't even start to think around putting VPNs onto personal devices. You might as well just wheel in hackers and stuff straight through the back door and into your core network. Think about how we can actually interact with devices on a remote basis securely at the very least. Now, that's like anything. The VPN side of it, that will generally be, as I just mentioned, for corporate-based owned devices. Now, there's only going to be a limited supply of them. Yes, laptops are very prevalent these days, but especially if you have a lot of first-line workers, maybe you've got in like local government, you'll have customer access points where they are desktop driven because they're just static endpoints. Those users are not going to have equipment that you can send them home with. So we need to think about how we pivot and support that side. Now, one of the things I want to talk about today is about the Windows Virtual Desktop, or WVD, as I'll start to refer to it in more short term. Now, why have I got a picture of a car up on screen? Well, a lot of people that know me know that I've just changed my car, and basically they turn to me and go, but Steve, you had a blue Megane and now you have a white Megane. Yeah, fine. I've stuck with the same brand. It was that feeling of comfortability for me. I knew where things were. I know how it drives. Yes, it's got a steering wheel. Yes, it's got 4 wheels, but I know exactly where my aircon buttons are. I know exactly where the heated seats are. I know what it's going to do when I go and throw it into a corner potentially. The difference is, like anything, this is a newer model. It has new improvements in capabilities. Yes, it goes faster, but it does the same basic job, but with a lot of performance enhancements that makes my life more fun and a lot easier in the long run. And it's similar with WVD. We are taking known technologies, and you'll see as I go through, it's Windows 10. If you're used to managing it on your desktop, you know how to deploy apps to it, you know your apps work on it, you can use the same skill sets, that learning curve. You're not going to radically bring in something and have to work out how to drive a three-wheeler, for example. You know what you're doing with it. So that comfortability factor goes a long way to what I'm going to show you and how it works. So, quick introduction time on this. So if I just flick out of here, minimize my slides, not surprisingly, you'll see I'm actually on my personal computer today. So I've deliberately made sure that I'm sat at home on my personal computer that I don't exactly trust at the best of times. I have 2 teenage sons, don't know what they get up to on this at the best of times. I am not going to risk pulling down corporate sensitive information. So, a couple of different ways that we have this, and we'll dive into it in a bit more detail. Number one, as soon as I start to sign in to the web-based version, it prompts me for my credentials and then immediately starts to kick in some of the conditional access stuff, especially around things like multi-factor authentication. So if I approve this request, I can start to get in. There we go. Now, the reason I've just gone to a web browser is because it's very important to show and say that this is completely device agnostic. And I'll mention this again in a little bit. But if you're starting to look at how users that you're not normally catered for, that don't have corporate devices, that might not even potentially have a Windows-based laptop anymore, as things like Chromebooks and iPads are a lot more prevalent, this solution will help you at least be able to cater for them without refactoring anything. It just natively uses HTML5 to deliver your applications. And you can see I have a range of either just direct applications that I've published or a full-blown desktop, which I'll come on to. Now, if I launch something like, let's go for Word, for example. Now, the only local resources I'm going to allow on this one is to my clipboard, because I want to do some copy and pasting, and my printer. I'm not allowing access to any local drives. You can't save locally. You can't go and drag stuff from local back into the corporate network. But this will now launch and render Word in literally a web browser. Now, yes, I'm on a PC, but that makes it easier for doing the presentation, but this could be on an iPad, for example. Now, what you will probably notice is after I sign in, it will change on my taskbar where I currently have PowerPoint open. So down here, you see I've got PowerPoint with this little logo on it. That's actually a remote app running on my desktop. So you can see it's just warned me I've been disconnected because it's going to pull that session and Word that I've just launched into the web browser. So there's my slides that I just had on screen. There's Word that's just come up. I can take my browser, I can resize it. I now have a truly flexible device-independent way of accessing applications or desktops. Now, I don't want to do the entire presentation in a web browser, so I'm just going to close that and then relaunch it from my desktop. Now you can see I have it pinned to my taskbar. you'll notice that it will open it and interact as if it is just an application locally. You'll see that it's pinned, or it's available on my start menu. So when you go and sign in for the first time, it basically will drag items from, if I just launch this remote desktop, when I've signed in, it will drag the items that I have available into and integrate and look and make it feel like they are first-party applications. So there's Word that I had open, and there's my slides again. Now, I deliberately removed Office from my local PC. I don't have any sort of applications installed. I don't have Teams. These are just my normal bits that I have on my PC, but I am still now working securely with corporate applications. So, a couple of different ways to do it. And then finally, I do have this option for a full remote desktop. So let me sign into that. Now, I was logged on earlier, so it's just picked up my session where I left off. I was doing some bits around reading on Windows 10, etc. I will come back to that side. So let's continue with some slides and explain some more. So one of the main things around this, and one of the benefits that we start to talk around on the Windows Virtual Desktop, is the apps, the capability, because it's cloud driven, to be able to do that burst scaling. We can start off small, we can grow, and we can reduce the need for it as we go. We don't have that need, and obviously you pay for what you use. Now, the only downside of the on-premise ones on this one is obviously if you have to go out and buy a load of licenses or new hardware, if you have an on-premise VDI environment and you suddenly need to cater for another 1,000, 2,000 users, you're going to go and buy physical tin to stick in a data center. And at the end of the peak burst, I think I'm probably being a bit optimistic in week 5 and 6 at this point on this slide, when the need for it starts to tail down, you're still going to have that unused spare capacity just idling along from your initial investment. This way, we can rapidly scale it depending on just the need that we have, and then we can back it down over time, keep it there for normal operational business continuity plans. Once you've got it, you're not just going to completely throw it away. Spin it up, spin it down as you need. So the 3 main big pieces that are involved in this that we'll start to look at fall into these main buckets. Now, I want to call out that while some of it is Microsoft managed, there is absolutely some of the stuff that you as an organization or with your IT partners will manage yourself. So clients are obviously always going to be managed by your organization, even in the terms of they are your corporate devices that you want to be able to publish applications to that you might not have the access over VPNs, etc. Or it's that bring your own device scenario that everyone shied away from, but we need to start looking at and thinking of how we securely do it very quickly in this scenario. Appreciate you don't necessarily manage them devices, but it's how we enable them devices from an IT and an organizational perspective to make sure people can get on and do what they need to do with whatever they have access to. That middle slice is where Microsoft do all the management bit. So the good thing on this, and I'll drill into the security side in a little second, is the fact that it's not completely Swiss cheesing your firewall, drilling stuff all the way through, opening up ports left, right, and center to get access. This is a cloud-based management plane that Microsoft look after. They scale, they look after the connections, how to distribute to session hosts, all the diagnostics layers, the availability, and make sure that it's securely then both protected at that layer and how we get into the back end, which is in essence your data center. So from the cloud perspective, the links through into your data center as if it was an extension of it, but we are not drilling in from Azure to that side. So all connections are done from outwards to the Microsoft endpoints and then back to the clients. But it means that we then are responsible as an organization, or you as a customer, looking after the desktops, what you're used to looking after already anyway. How do you commission your Windows 10? How do you reuse your current Windows 10 policies and controls that you have in place? You take your same applications that you already put onto your desktops and put them into the image. All the things that you're already looking at, how you use, how you do internally, is taken across as that same principle into this solution. You already have Active Directory, so we leverage that. We look at how we do it as synchronizing to the cloud, etc., to make it more secure and robust. And then finally, we look at the user profiles, because these can be potentially non-persistent sessions. How does the user move between different VMs in effect? And there is a solution as part of this that helps with that roaming aspect. So I keep mentioning about the security. This is the thing for me that is the most important. In the same way that I wouldn't just go and install a VPN on some random device and just hope it's secure, same way I wouldn't want to just completely assume the device is secure and connect back in. And this is where part of that wider solution, bringing in all the different things from Microsoft. How do we leverage some of the stuff within the Azure AD side around conditional access, checking the devices at least a little bit healthy, not from certain locations, putting a level of control around where we want people to be able to connect from, utilize things like multi-factor authentication. It goes without saying, I should hope, that you must enable multi-factor authentication on these types of remote scenarios. The biggest thing that is going to be left open on any type of solution or scenario on this one is identity theft, grabbing of passwords. Making sure that you have something that can mitigate and block against that is absolutely crucial. But then, because it's based on the Azure platform, you've got a lot of the benefits of what Microsoft have invested around with the security side of it, how they look after their control, the attacks and the vectors that they're monitoring and looking after and mitigating. So making sure that we bring in a lot of the things that we have potentially already within the Azure AD stack, conditional access, multi-factor authentication, making sure that we're taking as much away from the actual endpoints, so we're comfortable with using things like iPads or bring your own device scenarios with personal laptops, making sure that internally we separate out who's managing and controlling this if needs be, and being able to give people that look after applications just the ability to do the application pieces, making sure that people that have got the VMs do the VMs, and just making sure that it generally works within that remit of who needs to have access has access. Now, one thing that I didn't mention previously was I mentioned that you can publish apps, and mentioned you can have full desktop, but you can work in both that traditional VDI sense where you have an individual user on an individual VM. Great. Really good for if you need high performance, if you're trying to do AutoCAD, etc., within the cloud from remotely, you can scale, give the performance that that user needs. But for the vast majority, we'll be talking around that multi-session approach. So having multiple users on a single Windows 10 VM to be able to get on with normal line of business operation tasks. Final bit on the security side, again, it's that idea that I keep on trying to extol. We're not just worried on focusing on the desktop itself, no matter what that device is, but we're more focused on actually making sure that the identity coming through meets certain rules and requirements, making sure that they are who they say they are from that correct authentication piece, making sure that they only get the apps and the security that we want them to have. So making sure that it's not just a complete free-for-all and there's all the HR apps, even if you don't work in HR. And then making sure that we layer on the monitoring stuff from a central location rather than having to worry about thousands of endpoints, but we reduce that monitoring aspect down to just a few VMs for all the different users. So seeing is believing. So let's go back into what I was just working on. So you saw me with the different ways to connect, but one of them is I established that full desktop side. So while yes, I could just work on my local PC, I'd probably get a little bit distracted by StarCraft half the time. So rather, I'd like to have that full desktop experience, which means I am now in work mode. I've not got my distractions. I'm here, I have my applications. This is what I want to get on with. So like I say, maybe I'm doing some work on the support portal, maybe I'm just doing some research, etc. Maybe I am starting to do some actual grunt work and get into Excel. But more importantly, rather than it just being purely about the Office 365 scenario, we also have the capability to put on your line of business applications. So for example, if I want to load up something like System Center Orchestrator, which has a SQL backend back in the data center, it's connected to it, I can start to design my automation as I normally would. I am working remotely on a bring your own device scenario, but with my line of business application. Not that I'm an accountant, but maybe we have something like Sage, which is notorious at the best of times, connect through to a different file server, and again, start to work on this. So these are all standard types of applications off the shelf that you can be easily installed and accessed. Now, I did install manually Sage. I just downloaded a quick free trial on that side, but in terms of ongoing management, it might be better to actually properly bring any existing management tool sets you have, like Configuration Manager, back into the mix. And again, do the same way that your users are potentially already used to. If you want an application, these are already packaged, I'm deploying it. I now have 7-zip installed on my remote working solution, so I can go and use it exactly as I would have done as if I was creating and doing it on a local laptop. Easy as pie. Again, a lot of data for organizations hasn't been moved to the cloud, etc. So if you have things like big file servers, you can go and connect back to your on-premise devices. It's the typical type of site-to-site VPN, but being able to actually access documents, etc., from where they currently are without having to massively remodify your current infrastructure is a big bonus. Because this is where I keep on trying to express. This is Windows 10. Yes, it's Windows 10 multi-session, but at the end of the day, it is Windows 10. We know how it works. It's the same format, the same applications, no refactoring. It's spin it up, get on and use it. You can apply your same group policies. If you have NCSE guideline controls, they get applied. It locks down in exactly the same. Now this one that I've spun up at the minute, and it is connected to our corporate environment. So I am logged on as me. And I'll show you a quick example of as more collaboration needs to be done from remotely. Teams comes into the mix quite heavily. So while this is a non-optimized example VM, I thought it'd be good to show you what it's like from a completely bare perspective. You still get things like GIFs and stuff if you want to have that type of thing. But more importantly, I can collaborate with my team. So if I want to do some quick home working checks, see how the teams are doing, let's spin up a quick call. See who's around today. Oh, hi everyone. Oh, hello. How are you all doing, team? You doing good? Home life treating you well? No murdering of other household members yet? No, good. So really quickly, guys, I just wanted to say, obviously we're doing a lot more home working at the minute. Let me just pull up our home working policy because I want to make sure that everyone's used to this. So if I just download from our main store our home working guide. There we go. Let me drop this into our chat. There we go. You should have the PowerON home working guide in the chat channel. You got it? Yep. Sophie, can you just bring that up on screen and just share it for us? You got it, or do you want me to share it? There we go. Perfect. Oop, wrong screen, Sophie. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. I'll catch up with you in a little bit later. Enjoy. Cheers. Brilliant. So hopefully you can see that even in an unoptimized scenario, we still have the capabilities of being able to collaborate. We can talk to each other. Might not suggest doing a full-blown video conferencing call with lots and lots of people until we get some other bits in places that I'll show later. But the aspect is I am now fully working as if I was sat on a corporate device, back to how I do normally when needs aren't as pressing. So let's get back to the slides. So what's new and coming and what's actually available at the minute? So one of the things that I did want to just show is, yes, we have some of these management services, we can deploy it in Azure, we can scale it as required, but we're looking at using some PowerShell for some of the management at the minute, or some community tools. I'll talk about what's coming. You just saw me with some of the collaboration. So while, yes, it's capable, it is not fully optimized. This is an environment that I have done nothing to at the minute. I have just literally spun it up and put apps on it. And you can see how well it still already works, but there is some better and some more redirection stuff coming soon that I'll talk about in a second. You've got all that security that we wrap around it. So you've got all the authentication pieces, you have the conditional access, you have the profile management. We can manage them via config manager, as you saw me just pull down an application on the fly. That user profiles with the whole FS logics means that it's specifically optimized for bringing in OneDrive capabilities. If you didn't see a second ago on my desktop, I had a lot of the file placeholders from my OneDrive. My desktop follows me, so do all my settings between the different VMs, and that's enabled by this new FS logic capability that Microsoft have within it. And then the operating systems, I'm running Windows 10. Yes, you can run the traditional server RDS style infrastructure, but you can also run Windows 7 if you have some really old applications that you just cannot get away from. This also gives you that opportunity to be able to still deliver them to your home workers via a Windows 7 interface that is actually fully supported as well in terms of patches and updates. Now, in terms of the future investments, one of the main things is we're going to make this a lot easier. So we're going to see improvements within the portal to be able to go do the actual publishing of the applications, don't have to rely on any sort of community tools, which are really, really good actually. But this is all natively coming into the actual portal experience. So it's a click and place type of scenario for ongoing. And I keep on mentioning the Microsoft Teams one, and that's because it's really pertinent at the minute. If you don't already have in place voice over IP, or you're relying on mobile phones and the cost of the contracts on that, or people's personal phones for dialing in, this potentially solves a little problem on that side. Microsoft at the minute are offering a 6-month free Microsoft Teams licensing, so it makes it very quick to be able to look at adopting without major decisions on that side if you have nothing in play already. And being able to put it into the remote desktop solution, it works, especially from an IM and collaboration perspective on documents, etc. But the voice and the audio, Microsoft have got some more improvements to do on that side, where we'll start to see client-side redirection, meaning that the actual device itself, the physical device, will do a lot of the offloading and the grunt, meaning less resources are required in the cloud side. And talking about optimizations, so it's one thing getting there very rapidly. And like I say, we can spin up basic desktops within a matter of days to get things in and working and going, get applications on so staff can still continue to deliver the services for your business. However, this is something you always want to do as an iterative process. We look at things like, well, actually, if you have all them files on local file servers stored locally on your network that will still need to come up and down your pipe, how do we make them as close to the VMs and the users in the cloud as possible? Things like Azure File Sync, DFS name redirection. Again, with bandwidth optimization for Office 365, if you're enforcing proxies for monitoring, you don't want all your traffic again coming back down the pipe to your proxies, out to the internet, back in, and then back out to the cloud again over your pipe. You're going to overload your pipe. And this applies to VPN solutions as well. You need to think about exactly how we start to do either split tunneling or redirect for the Office 365 traffic, if nothing else. Policy settings, so like I say, completely unoptimized environment that you saw. I can go in further, I can tune down some of the graphics, take away some of the fancy effects, stop extra services, make things a more priority. There are optimizations that can be done to better increase both density and performance for cost. And of course, we have that Teams over IP redirection. Reduction of the management overhead. If you don't already have Config Manager in your environment, managing your devices, then how do we look at being able to spin up that with other solutions, such as our cloud-based Pulse platform, where we can take control of it? You saw that I was connected, I had it in there, I was managing the device, delivering stuff. That's from our cloud-based Pulse into it, so we can just rapidly reuse what we have. If you already have it, great. You just look at getting it in there and managing them as normal devices. And then finally is probably the most important piece to actually go and do once you're in and working and operational, and that's looking at the automation and the scalability behind it. We don't want to use this in the same way that I saw that graph right at the beginning, where we just add capacity, add capacity, add capacity, and then every night at midnight you've got 10 servers running, costing money, nobody logged on. We look at how we scale that down automatically and spin it back up in the morning as the demand is driven for it. Only pay for what you actually need to use. Azure is billed by the minute, by the hour, not by the month. So there's no point having it turned on. So you pay for what you use. So at this point, I'm just going to hand back and see if there's any questions, because I can't see the screen myself and I don't have a separate one to pull it up. Do we have any questions that want answering at this point?
We do. We have a question from Alan, who's asked if you recommend any applications to manage passwords.
Ooh, manage passwords. Bit of a broad one on that one. If I can ask you to probably clarify it a little bit more. But in terms of managing passwords, the biggest one for me personally is making sure that if you are going to use a solution like this or any other solution that can integrate with Azure Active Directory, it's less about worrying about just purely the password management for the individual, but more about the actual protection of that identity. So that's where things like the multi-factor authentication comes in, having the ability to do reports on risky sign-ins, having risk-based conditional access. So if you see that all of a sudden he's opening it up in Australia, and that's a good 11-hour flight or something, yet he's based in Croydon, then he's obviously not going to have done that if he logged in 5 minutes ago and then he's logging across in Australia. So it's more about protection of identity than just purely passwords, unless it's a more generalistic question about passwords.
Great. And we also have a question from Mark. He's asked, how does it handle database-driven on-premise applications?
Yep, that's a really good one. Let me just flick back to my demo. So the one that you just saw me opening a minute ago on this one. So this is a database-driven application. This has a full-blown SQL server in the background. I've not actually gone and installed SQL Management Studio, or I was going to show it. So this is connecting to that SQL backend, and it is running in this VM, but SQL is not. So in this type of situation scenario, it works. The biggest thing that comes down to considerations around the latency and the bandwidth of your on-premise internet-based connection, basically. So depending on how you optimize that, whether it can just be run, whether you can do traffic shaping down it, whether it's just absolutely the application doesn't care about the latency side, they might just run a bit slower. These are the considerations that you need to think about when you start to look into it. There are other optimization scenarios that we can get into on this one, where we can say, well, actually, is it where we can invoke things like Azure Site Recovery, and we can actually migrate temporarily that application backend up into Azure? Maybe. It depends purely on the actual needs of the application and whether the bandwidth and the latency needs to be accounted for with that application from the cloud down to your on-premise application. But we treat it on a per application basis as we start to look. But generally, it works. There's no technical reason why it won't work. It'll just be speed and performance that we need to assess.
Great, we've had a couple more questions. So Rob has asked, how global is the solution? Obviously because we're UK based, so he's wondering if Asia or the US would have the same experience, specifically around the remote desktop tool.
Yep. So there is a control plane that Microsoft have, and they scale that out. It started in the East US anyway for the control plane. I think they've now got it across in West Europe, and they keep on adding different places. There is a experience latency analyzer test that you can do from a browser that will show you your expected round trip to the backend service. But in terms of the session VMs, you can put them wherever you want. So I have mine currently in West Europe in terms of VMs. I could put them in the UK South data centers. I could put them across in the East US data centers. I would put the actual session host VMs, so the Windows 10 VMs, wherever it is closest to your data center and your apps. So if you're going to have your backend applications and your file data across in the US, put the VMs and your exit VPN endpoint and stuff in the US, and then have another pool for your UK customers, and so on and so on.
Great, and we've got one more follow-up question from Alan regarding password management. So he's interested in how you would manage the fact that people working at home are often forgetting the passwords and getting frustrated, especially when they have a lot of different passwords to remember.
Perfect. This is probably where I completely fail on a demo perspective on the fly, but by the very nature of moving into using some of this lot with an Azure Active Directory scenario as well, is you get, as part of the AD Premium one, something called self-service password reset. Self-service password reset, there we go. Got that one correct first off. So you can email and distribute the link for this. You can have it on your intranet, wherever you want to be able to make sure that people know it. You can put your own short links on there. But basically now I have the ability, you can force users to register for this firsthand. You can go in and reset and unlock your account securely. So it uses something called password write back. So it changes it in the cloud and then synchronizes that back to your on-premise AD. Backed by all the usual things, conditional access, multi-factor authentication. If they haven't got multi-factor authentication and can't receive either text message or use the app, you can even, and I don't prefer this option, but it's there, go and have them register for a series of questions like what's your mother's maiden name and so on. So this, especially in these times, is probably one of the biggest, quickest wins that you could implement.
Great, I think that is all the questions we have. So thanks for your time, Steve, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Before you do, Rhiannon, I've just got one last little bit to go. So getting started on this, so as I just mentioned, lots of different things that I've just shown you, lots of quick wins to be able to do this, that ability to be able to take any device anywhere and quickly be able to offer an environment that you as IT professionals know how to use in essence already in terms of Windows 10, the applications, no refactoring of anything, being able to get it out there securely and quickly. A couple of things you might need to be thinking about, considering about, and how we can potentially have to help you with this one. And that's obviously you need to have an Azure subscription. This is a cloud Microsoft offering. How, if you're not already, and bear in mind that if you are already an Office 365 user or user of some of that services, you will have a lot of this already. You'll have the Azure subscription, you'll have the Azure Active Directory by syncing up your identities from on-premise. That needs to be there. There is a conversation to be had around where we do the file storage for profiles, whether that be file servers that we spin up in Azure, whether we use more of the SaaS-based options around the Azure Files technology. And you do need some licensing. But again, chances are you're already covered for this. So if you are a Windows E3 license user, if you're a Microsoft M365 E3 user, you will have the licenses for this already. You only pay for the compute costs. There are some more nitty-gritty details. Give it a shout on that one, we can dive into it. But for corporate devices especially, if you covered your corporate devices, you're covered for this. But you do need to align what your needs are. The biggest and easiest way to understand in detail if this will start to suit your organization and suit your needs is to speak with one of our team members. maybe this isn't the right solution for you. I'm not saying this is a one size fits all and it's absolutely ideal for everyone. There are other ways, there's other control mechanisms we can put in place. There's always on VPN, there's other security controls, there's Windows information protection. There's a whole boatload of technologies that are at the disposal of people to be able to deliver a secure desktop. This is one option. It's a big option and it is a very robust option to be able to deliver it. And it's for your right needs of your business. You're probably not going to want to put somebody on there that does full-blown Photoshop and Adobe Premiere editing. That's slightly overkill. If you have lots of line of business applications, frontline workers, call centers that need to be able to get on and access case management systems, review documents, be able to get on with that usual stuff where they are usually at a desk and not with a laptop, then this is ideally suited. Talk to us, let us understand what you need, how we can help you, what our rapid deployment packages are. I keep on saying this can be spun up very quickly. We don't have months and months of decision taking, not months and months of trialing on this. We can get this in, we can test it, we can try it, we can scale it. Let's look around at simple proof of concepts to see if this is, for additional validation, going to work with some of them things like your backend application that you asked a minute ago. Is that latency going to make this an effective solution? Now just about finished. So multiple different ways to get in touch with us. If you're not one of our customers already, usual things, you can find it on the website. Numbers are on screen at the minute. Please do reach out. There's our corporate Twitter handle on there. I do have my own personal one as well, so at StevieBSC. Please do reach out and speak to us. Now I'll let you finish off.
I won't get ahead of myself this time. Yeah, thanks again everyone for joining. We will be sending this out as a recording directly after the webinar, and we will be sending out some information on some upcoming events that we're looking to hold. So if you're interested, please do give us some feedback. And thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. I know this is a very unprecedented time at the best of want of words. Please do speak to us and let us see how we can help you through some of these. This, just as a final wrap-up thought from me, we're used to the remote working aspect from PowerON. We do it as a business. It's not a major change for us. Maybe we can bring some of our actual operational knowledge to the forefront to actually help you on this. But thank you very much.